Hello everybody, Andrew Blake from the digitalaudiomanual.com. Today let's talk about the Padshop in Cubase. So in today's video I want to try to give you a basic overview look at Padshop, which is included in Cubase, and try to introduce you to some of the options that go beyond just opening up a preset. And although opening up the presets produces excellent results, some of you may want to know about these basic settings, how to get around this interface without being intimidated, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Over on the left, we have this button that switches the oscillator type. You'll see one is kind of an orange color and one's kind of an aqua color. For the first demonstration, switch it to this orange color one. We're going to talk about creating grains. When you're working with the grain oscillator and creating grains, you're using just a small portion typically of whatever sample that you have in here. And in order to begin learning about this, you're going to want to use the initial sound that comes in Padshop. It almost sounds like a bad church organ. It contains just a very simple wave. It's important to use this sound because all these knobs really affect it. The minute you start using a preset, it's hard to tell what the defaults are and what settings are being changed. So step one, we want to load a sample in here. If you go over to the right, there's a little arrow and it says the project sample. If you hit that down arrow, you kind of get a Padshop media bay, all kinds of different samples to explore already. Go up to the search area, type in crystal pad, and you should see the highlighted option for the crystal pad. I'm going to select that, and now we have this sound. First setting to look at is you look just under the sample, there's some words and categories. There's one here that says duration. By default, it looks like it's set at 1, and you have a knob below it. For all these settings, you can either go right over the numbers and spin your mouse wheel. You get fine settings that way, or you can grab this knob and move it. Knob goes from 1 to 1,000. As I play this, I'm going to move the duration a little bit and listen to what it does to the sound. Very drastic. Starts out changing the pitch, then it seems to be changing the texture. In order to understand what this is actually doing, if you look up on the wave, with the duration turned down all the way, over on the left, you're going to begin seeing a little area of motion. As I turn the duration up and play the sound, you can see that it spreads over a longer section. If I keep turning it up, keep spreading over a longer and longer section. We're going to start by setting this at 200. This is considered a single grain and is being repeated over and over again. We go to the next option. It says number, and below it, it says number 1 in this example, right next to the duration. This is telling us the number of grains, in this case being number 1. As we turn this knob up, the picture of this grain becomes denser and denser, with more little division lines. Bring this down to number 3. If we go over on the far left, we have a knob that says POS, and that stands for the position. As we move that, this grain and all these little wavy lines is going to move along the wave. Right now it's on the far left as I play it. As I move it over a little bit, now it's more towards the center. If I move it further, it goes to the far right. And then if I go far enough, it actually spills over from the far right and then comes back around to the beginning again. This is deciding what part of the sample you're trying to take your grain from. The next option, kind of up and to the right, we have a button that says random. With this button turned all the way down, our grain just stays in one spot. But if we go to random, we're going to see that selection move along the wave in all kinds of different places. That tends to smooth the sound out as it's grabbing samples all along the different range of it, and it's doing it randomly. By all means, you can experiment and just move these knobs to get a basic understanding of how they affect the sound. For example, we have one that says pitch. If we move that around, or if we go to the length option, other things to experiment with, just with the basic sound. We come to this middle area. It says filter on the heading. You can go to the cutoff. Up on top of the toolbar, you can move over to what says effects if we want to add an effect. There's little on and off switches. We can try adding a reverb. or a delay. And that gives us our first example of how to load and work with some of the settings on Padshop. If at any time you hit a sound that you like, be sure and come up and save it as a preset in the upper left. We can click on it and say save the preset, give it a name, and hit OK. Okay, let's do another one. Looking at a short grain, open an initial Padshop again. In the wave it says pure sine. If you don't have that, you can actually load that as well. Type in pure sine and then load it up. We play a single note with our number of grains at 1 and this option that says key follow at 100%. And we change this duration from 1 and bring it down to 2. That note drops exactly 1 octave. If we do the same thing and look at the picture up here in the upper left, this shows us what the grain looks like. And as I increase the duration, you can see that the grain gets larger as well, covering more of the sample. If we come down to the far right, we have one that says shape, and that changes the sound if we play that. If we come down into the pitch area, we have the knob for the formant. You can change that around. That's where you can come down and start experimenting with this modulation matrix. For example, if we come down to where it says destination and we change that to the grain length, meaning it's going to affect this knob, and then we come up to the source, we set that to something like the filter envelope, which is this set of sliders where it says filter and then you see these sliders, and we change this offset and this depth just to get some kind of reading. I start moving these sliders around. Then I'm going to get changes in the actual sound. Again, I can go up to the effects, turn on some delay and some reverb. And then we have quite a different sound from where we started. And then again, we can come up and save that as a preset. You can actually go back up onto this wave, and the grain right now is on the far left. But if I click with my mouse somewhere on this wave, that becomes where the grain plays. Again, giving you some real variations. So if we go up to the button for the oscillator type in the upper left, click on that. As we've said, we get this kind of blue aqua display. This is called the spectral oscillator view, and this one here is the grain oscillator view. In the grain oscillator view, we get some various parameters, but when we switch over to the spectral oscillator view, then we get some different parameters, and the sound changes. Here it is as the grain oscillator. And then here it is as the spectral oscillator. The first thing you're going to want to do here is experiment with some of the different knobs, because now they affect different choices in your sound. For example, in the spectral view, we have this knob here that says purity. When we go back to the grain view, that knob says the key F or the key follow. So if we change this purity knob and turn it to the left, kind of get this noisy sound introduced. Basically, it brightens up the sound. Next to that, you have this one that says in harm, stands for the spectral inharmonicity, kind of changes the sounds from clean to dissonant. It's a little hard to hear on this sound. It's a little more apparent if I go over and change the formant knob and then turn this in harm. You can hear that kind of mechanical sound. Let's go back up to the left, click on this button and change this back to the grain oscillator view for a minute. All right, I want to give you a tip to help you start working with and understanding this area down here that's called the modulation matrix. They named it appropriately when they called it the matrix, because you can certainly get lost in it. Let me give you something very basic. Take this basic idea and then go create about 30 different presets with it until the idea becomes cemented in your thinking, and you'll be ready to move on to the next idea. And that idea concerns this area that says the source, the area at the bottom that says the destination, and then the area right above that that says the depth. You want to begin to understand that whatever you put into the source, that is going to affect the destination. How much it's going to affect the destination is going to depend on the depth. That's why it's somewhat complicated. You want to take this a little at a time till you get a grip on it. Here's an easy example to try for yourself. If you go to the source option, go down to where it says the modulation wheel, or in this case it says mod wheel, and then at the destination, take the option that says pitch. If I begin playing the Padshop, and I come up to this area that says coarse in the pitch area, and spin that with my mouse wheel, you get this effect. Because what it's doing is turning the pitch up. I could do the same thing and turn it down. Now back to the modulation matrix. Because we've set the mod wheel in the source area to control the pitch in the destination area, if I come down and hit the mod wheel, right now it does absolutely nothing. Because the next thing you have to do is assign something on the depth. understanding that if the depth is right in the middle like it is here, that means it's going to have no effect no matter what you've assigned to the source or the destination. If you move this in varying degrees to the right, and I'm just going to move it all the way to the right, now the modulation wheel is going to change the pitch. If I send this depth to the other direction, now it's going to lower the pitch. The concept you want to learn is that the depth is either going to increase the value of whatever you've set here, or it's going to decrease the value of whatever you've set here. So again, because we've assigned the pitch, if I increase the value, it's going to raise the pitch up. If I decrease the value, it's going to take the pitch down. And all of these moves are controlled by the modulation wheel. Let's try a different example. We'll leave the modulation wheel in place. We'll go to the destination, come down to the area that says grain, which opens up a sub-menu, and then we'll go over to the option that says grain formant. That's going to control this knob right here that says the formant. Once again, if I play this and just turn this knob, it does this. Because I have the modulation wheel set to adjust the grain formant, if I move this depth to the right, it's now going to do the same thing I did when I turned the knob to the right. If I move the modulation wheel, it does this. If I take the depth and I move it all the way to the left, it's going to have the same effect as if I come up to this knob and move it to the left. I'm going to come down, turn the modulation wheel. Let's do one more, then you'll have plenty to work with. Again, we're going to leave the modulation wheel. That's a very easy one to understand. This time we'll come down to the destination, go down the list till we see cutoff. Select that. Now that's going to affect this knob right here that says cutoff. If I turn that halfway, play the song and then turn it up, it's going to have that kind of effect. If I come down and turn the modulation wheel, now it's going to do the same thing. If I move the depth all the way to the left, it's like coming up to this cutoff, moving the knob to the left. When I move the modulation wheel, it's going to have that same effect. If you practice those moves and make some choices like that, you will begin to get some kind of understanding of what's happening here in this matrix. And then we can build on that at a later video, dealing with things like the offset, the second modifier, and using the other slots. Let's talk about some of the LFO options. If you look down here in the lower right, you'll see some buttons that say LFO number 1, 2, 3, and 4. One of the things these allow us to do is to get our sound moving with the tempo. If I play the basic sound again, there's nothing really happening tempo-wise there. In this LFO area, as well as other areas on the Padshop, you have these little star things, and these allow you to drag certain areas over other areas. Just for an example, take this little star from this LFO, drag it over the formant. See, as I move it, I start to change colors. I'm going to go to the button that says formant, and then let go of my mouse. If I play a single note now, you're going to hear this kind of a sound. What it's doing, even though you can't see the knob changing, the LFO causing this knob to go back and forth, which gives it that kind of wavy sound. Once we've set up something like that, we can come down into the area. We have an option that says the sync mode. Click on that. We can tell it to sync it to the tempo. Then if we come over to the area that says retrigger and click on that, we can come down and retrigger each time the project starts. And then if we move up to the upper right, there's an option that shows the note value. Right now by default it says 1-4. You'll want to experiment with these. As we come down the list it says 4-4. And then if I play the sound and turn on the click, you can hear that it's now in time with the beat of the tempo. Let me add a drum track in here so you can really hear it. And now if I change the tempo, that fluctuating sound in the Padshop will also change as well. So there's all kinds of ways you can experiment with that and syncing up your tempo of whatever your oscillator is playing. Some things I would recommend you do, besides practicing all the steps we covered today, go up into your wave area, basically just experiment with all the different waves that they've provided us, and hit any of these little arrows to expand, or you can hit this plus button up here. It opens up this big long list of things. But if I start the project playing, then click on any of the choices I have here, there's all kinds of great sounds to be found in here. Just experiment through the different waves. And then finally, going back to your main library, click on any of these fields, and explore your presets, whatever packages you may have, or just the basic included ones in Padshop. But as you load your presets now, you're going to see the grain oscillator show up, or sometimes you'll see the spectralator oscillator show up. And then once you've loaded a preset, try changing the oscillator. Hear what the difference is. Experiment with the number of grains or the duration, the different position settings. Experiment with the purity, the formant, and then analyze some of your favorite presets in general. Begin to understand how they created some of these sounds now that you have this basic understanding of the interface in general. And again, if you create something nice of your own, be sure to go up and save it as your own preset. Also, when you're ready to get really creative, you may want to start adding your own personal samples into the Padshop. You can pretty much drag them in from anywhere. If I go to the media bay, pick any sample. If I click on that and drag it over the waveform display on the Padshop, then it loads it onto the Padshop. I can click on the waveform wherever I want it to start. If I actually want to hear the sample, I want to turn this duration up all the way. But now when I play a key, then I can begin changing the sound. Take a different sound out of the media bay, drag it in. You can drag sounds in from your project. All different kinds of things to explore that way. And that should give you some basic understanding to allow you to look at your included Padshop in a little different way now. So have some fun with all those different options, and I'll see you next time. All right, it's going to wrap it up for today. As always, if you haven't already, click the link in the description of this video to learn how you can get access to the all-new Digital Audio Manual Preferred. It's the clear, step-by-step solution showing you not only the tips, but all the secret and typically never talked about features that'll take you to a higher level of using your software. If you've been searching for an all-in-one solution to take you from start to finish and learning Cubase and Wavelab and other music software, this is exactly what you've been looking for. So click on the link in the description and come and be part of the clear path to a better learning experience. So today we took an introductory look at the Padshop. We had a basic feature overview, talked about grains, did a couple of examples, switched it to the Spectral oscillator, took a minute and looked at the modulation matrix. Then we finished up talking about the LFOs. And we will continue to explore all our different creative options and the tools that we have available to us. As always, it's great to have you guys here, and I'll see you on the next video.